Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where in the world you're joining from today. My name is Meg Regan. I'm a Senior Director of Executive Programs, a lecturer in Work and Organization Studies, and an executive coach here at MIT Sloan School of Management. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this LinkedIn Live event focused on building and scaling an inclusive workforce development pipeline. As many of you in attendance well know, the mission of the MIT Sloan School of Management is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to three such leaders from our community who live and breathe our mission and are part of an exciting new program at MIT called the BILT-Lab, Businesses for Inclusive Local Thriving. This program is for leaders who want to tackle their own talent needs and advance their region's competitive future forward innovation strategy by training a workforce of the future. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to this fabulous panel. First off, Dr. Kate Isaacs. Kate is a scholar, teacher, and strategy advisor who designs organizations and stakeholder partnerships for people and places to thrive. She's a co-founder of the BILT-Lab and a senior lecturer at MIT Sloan, where she teaches courses on distributed leadership, discovering your leadership signature, and inclusive innovation. She's an executive fellow at the Higher Ambition Leadership Alliance, where she and colleagues run CEOs Leading Local, a network of business coalitions that work to accelerate positive social and economic change in communities. Kate writes and speaks about leadership, innovation, and sustainability for a variety of publications. Tom Giordano is BILT-Lab co-founder and the executive director for Partnership for Rhode Island. In his role at Partnership for Rhode Island, Tom leads a business roundtable that reports directly to 15 CEOs, including multiple Fortune 500 executives. He has over 10 years of experience in managing partnerships among the private, public, and nonprofit sectors and finding efficient and effective opportunities to create value for all parties involved. Tom is an experienced public affairs, fundraising, and social impact executive who specializes in stakeholder engagement and collaboration. He's raised over $100 million for various political and civic causes and has built a profile of one of the nation's strongest public affairs operatives. He is passionate about building partnerships and programs to address regional, societal, and business challenges, from education achievement, workforce development pipelines, sustainability, and economic development ecosystems. And Malia Lazu. Malia is a lecturer in the TIES group here at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and TIES stands for Technological Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Strategic Management. Malia is an award-winning tenured strategist in diversity and inclusion and has sparked deep economic development and investments in urban entrepreneurship for over 20 years. In her most recent role as EVP and regional president at Berkshire Bank, Malia worked to generate wealth for communities by expanding access to capital and spurring economic growth, especially in communities of color that have traditionally been left behind. And Malia also has a book coming out in February 6th, from intention to impact. And we'll be looking forward to that and seeing her on tour around the world sharing that. So welcome all. And if you hear a rooster crowing in the background, that is one of Malia's neighbors. She's joining us from Hawaii, and the roosters are chiming in. So if you hear that, that's what that's coming from. So welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just want to start off with the why now. So the BILT-Lab, Businesses for Inclusive Local Thriving, is a program for leaders from the public and private sector to come together and create strategies for the regions to prepare, attract, and retain the talent that they'll need for their region's economies to thrive. Why did you decide to create the BILT-Lab, and why is building and scaling an inclusive workforce development pipeline so important right now?
Well, I can kick us off, and Malia and Tom, please jump in. the three of us have been working on this idea for about 1.5 years now. And in this country and all over the world, it's a time of great uncertainty, ambiguity. The world is changing so fast, and people all over the planet are asking, how can I provide for a sustainable livelihood for myself, my family? How can I be resilient in the face of very fast changing circumstances and a lot of stress that we're all experiencing? And also, how can I be agile and adaptive in the face of opportunities that are coming up as well? So it's an uncertain and ambiguous time. It's also a time of real opportunity. And globally, there are some macro trends that are happening that we see here in this country and are happening across the globe. In America right now, we are seeing a trend of reshoring a lot of work, manufacturing and other things back into the country. We are seeing trends around decarbonization of the economy all over the planet and a move towards a decarbonized economy. We are in this country remilitarizing, and we're, of course, in the midst of several global conflicts, which are triggering a lot more uncertainty in the global economic space. And also, people are realizing that this system of inequity that we have, where the rich folks are getting richer and the folks who are trying to get ahead are not getting ahead as fast as they need to. There are some pretty stark statistics, for instance, and Malia can speak more to this, but here in Boston, the average wealth gap of white families and Black families is very large. And people are just realizing that the global system is not working for many of us. And so there is a turn towards more interest in growing regional economies and making our regional city and state economies more resilient, more robust, more innovative, and having clear strategic focus for innovation for those regions. Now, along with that, there's also a turn towards developing our talent pipelines locally and regionally. In this country, there's a big movement, and rightly so, towards developing more diverse talent and also equipping people with 21st century skills that businesses need to thrive and be innovative and fuel those regional economies. No longer in this war for talent can we just, regions can just hire from the national talent pool because it's so competitive. And so businesses all over are now turning towards thinking about how to partner with their community colleges, the K-12 system, other workforce developers to upskill, reskill, bring historically marginalized folks, returning citizens from the prison system into the talent pipeline and into our innovation pipeline so that we can really create inclusive prosperity. So let me just pause there and invite Malia and Tom to add.
Kate, thanks so much. And I think, Meg, it's a perfect question, the why now, right? And from my point of view, I've spent my career advising CEOs and governors and senators. And what we're hearing from all of them, from a local town mayor to a state governor to our CEOs, is that we need a more sustainable, with a lowercase s, inclusive workforce pipeline. We need to better understand how to bring in the skills and the talent that we need that looks like the community we want to serve. And that we don't know how to do it well just yet. And that is a problem, right? Because we know how to do public-private partnerships incredibly well, whether it be with bridges or technology, but we haven't figured it out around people. And so I think now is a perfect time for us to dive into how can business leaders work and sometimes quarterback that work, right, across sectors to say, we want to build a workforce for the future that represents our customer base, it represents our community, and it delivers on our bottom line as well.
Thanks, Tom. Malia, a question for you. What should companies and leaders be asking as they seek to hire and retain diverse talent with the right technical expertise and leadership skills for this sustainable local growth that Tom and Kate are referring to?
I think the first question that leaders need to ask themselves is why they haven't been able to do this before, right? Oftentimes people think that they can come to a class, we're going to give you a little certificate, and you all of a sudden you'll have diverse staff. And at the end of the day, that's not how it works, right? The reason why we even need to do these efforts is because of institutional and systemic racism, sexism, homophobia, right? The outcomes of colonization in this country, what have you. And so the work that I do and have done, with clients, with students at MIT is to really reflect on what are your right biases, what are the assumptions you make, what are you not curious about, because you created a culture that's not attractive to women, that's not attractive to people of color, and if you do attract them, you're a great training ground until they go somewhere else, right? And so the first question that I ask is, why haven't you been able to do this? And then from there, we may get to other questions. But oftentimes this work is asked, folks want to see, well, how do we work with women? Well, how do we work with, with people of color so we can do DE and I. And I joke around, I say, it's not us, right? We know we're valuable. We know we belong in your business, especially now in the 21st century where America is becoming a pivotal power, right? We need that global diversity to keep us relevant in a global economy. And so it's about understanding what have you built and what do you need to unbuild in order to future-proof your company and move into the next part of the 21st century.
Thanks, Malia. And I feel like what I'm hearing there too is, this is every leader's job, and there are leaders at all levels of an organization, right? And we need to be thinking about these things and not thinking it's someone else's job. It's the human resource department's job to figure out how to make things more inclusive, how to retain the talent and that sort of thing. It's everyone's job.
That's right. And I'm so glad you mentioned human resources, because I actually think that's a place where you want to have DE&I, but it's actually the worst place for DEI to be set, right? Human resources is a cost center. So right now, if you're looking at the layoffs that are happening, right, in banking and finance and whatever, what you're seeing, right, is what goes first, the cost centers, right? If we see diversity as charity, then we're actually sitting in our privilege, right? And we're not valuing others the way we should. And so not only do you want it to be a decentralized structure, but you also want it to sit in places of power, right? When I was at the bank, the reason why I could offer different debt tools and, really try to work on closing the racial wealth gap that Kate talked about, was because I had access to power. There was no way I could have done that if I was a director level, even if I was right below the chief people officer or chief, it's not an innovative place. It's an anti-risk place, right? It's a place that avoids risk, avoids lawsuits, and sits in compliance. And it needs to. Don't burden it with then asking it to innovate for the future for something that a culture, a company culture has a failure on.
Malia, I was going to say the exact same thing. HR teams by design are risk averse, right? And when you see leaders right from the C-suite down saying, we want to, embed inclusivity, we want to embed this, and we need to start doing a better job of it. The way to de-risk it is to build a partnership that can actually survive, right? But again, not environmentally sustainable, but sustainable, right? That can exist beyond leadership and exist beyond trends, right? Macro or micro, to say that we want to build a pipeline and a workforce that looks the way and feels the way we want it to.
That's right.
I want to pick up on a comment that Heather Ransom put in chat, which I think is very well said, which is this move to a more entrepreneurial model. And I think that is very true. And a lot of times in large companies, it gets very bureaucratic and we lose some of that innovative spirit. Some of the work that I've done and we have done at Sloan is around distributed leadership and how do you flip the paradigm from a top-down and command and control, where you've got the people at the top who hold the power, who are often white folks who have historically been in place, to flip that upside down so that you are having folks who are designing a game board for entrepreneurialism, where people who are diverse in all ways, and we're talking racial diversity, ethnic diversity, gender diversity, neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is increasingly important to recognize and make sure that we have ways for people who are neurologically divergent to get involved and participate in an entrepreneurial approach to solving and tackling complicated challenges, to taking advantage of those opportunities around innovation that are constantly bubbling up. And I would posit that American society is uniquely great at innovation. And we need to make sure that as leaders, we're creating not just companies, but regions that are positioned to be part of that great game of continuous innovation. And if we leave anyone out of that, we miss out on their talents, their perspectives. I have to remind myself all the time that I don't have the same lived experience as a white woman in American society as many other people in our culture. And so because I don't have that same lived experience, I need to make sure that I create those inclusive cultures where people can contribute their perspectives, their ideas, where they feel psychologically safe to do so, where they're invited to do so, and they're doing that in a way that they feel comfortable doing. And there's multiple channels and different ways for them to contribute to this amazing and adventure of continuous innovation.
Thanks, Kate. And picking up on Heather's comment as well, I've seen examples where younger generations have been very engaged by programs that have been offered by large corporations for them to be involved in communities and do pro bono work as part of what they do in their jobs and their roles. That's just bringing me to this local in our acronym, right? Building inclusive, local, thriving. What's so important about that local piece?
Well, I'll start. I mean, I manage a CEO roundtable in Rhode Island, right? Which with a lot of big institutional companies that do a very, very small percentage of their business within Rhode Island, right? Imagine CVS or Bank of America, right? Or even Citizens Bank, which is largely regional. It is important because it's important to your employees. It's important because it's important to the mission of your business, right? CVS always talks about a purpose-driven mission, and that starts at home, right? That starts by understanding that the neighborhood that your employees drive through, right, can be invested in, right? That starts by saying our future employees live in this neighborhood and we need to better invest here as well. So I think the local part is enormously important, right? We've seen a reprioritization of diversity initiatives, right? Understandably over the last few years, trying to figure out, CEOs are doing their best to make sure that money is spent in impactful ways. And that means being efficient and effective, right? And I think the way to do that can always be as in the nearest radius circle from your corporate headquarters, investing there. Right. That is always a good decision, but that takes partnerships, right? And that takes understanding what that work requires, right? Who to engage, how to engage them, how to build that common language. And that's what we're hoping we can really tackle here.
I'd love to jump in on that, because what Tom is hitting on is, I think, and even Heather's comment, I think it fits into this generational shifting, right? And we want to think about these generations. Often we think about from our generation, right, from our purview, but when we think about millennials, right, these are young people who have watched their parents dedicate their lives to a job to lose their house in 2008. These are people who have had a Black president in their life, right? That was no big whoop. It happens, right? These are people who over 70% are willing to take a pay cut to work for a company that aligns with their values. That is the complete opposite from my generation, from I'm Gen X, from anyone Gen X and beyond and behind, right? We were trained that greed is good. We were trained in rugged individualism. And these younger generations are seeing the outcomes of that, right? They're seeing the racial unrest, they're seeing the homophobia, they're seeing, the geopolitical conversations of this whole European Enlightenment experiment and where it went wrong, right? So this idea of going local, of rebuilding, right, of growing local, of having local agency, I think is actually survival, right? It's evolution. I think it's coming out like unconsciously because it's like this is what we need to do to build a future we can all live in. And so, local is authentic, right? Local has relationships, as Tom said. I'll find out what the community's saying about you, right? I can find out, I can have that word of mouth relationship. And that's what employees and consumers are looking for, right? People, to get to the consumer side, a majority of people are willing to pay more for a product that aligns with their values. So, unlike any other time in America where it was like, take your Mad Men marketing, smoke your cigarettes, drink your Ovaltine and have a great day. That's not where we are, right, anymore. And these young people have a different kind of agency and they understand that it starts local, right? Clean your own house before you go and tell anyone else about theirs.
Thanks, Malia. And I think that's what's so exciting about this program that we're launching here. It's the mind in hand, or mens et manos approach that we embrace so much at MIT is about doing, right? Learning by doing, and not just studying something or reading something, but really closing that knowing doing gap and doing something with what you're learning. And that's what we want to do in this lab. So I think it would be great for folks to hear a little bit about what kind of experience teams that participate in this lab would have. What kind of outcomes could they expect? What kind of projects might they be working on?
I can take a first crack at that and invite Tom and Malia to contribute. So we envision the lab being a platform for teams of business-led teams from regions to come and bring in at least a couple of community partners that are relevant to an issue that they want to tackle in their region or community. So we're hearing from people that they want to work on projects around diverse and inclusive workforce development from K to 12 on, and even including early childhood, because early childhood development, when business leaders get involved in that, it turns out to be really good for workers. When their kids go to childcare regularly and reliably, then people can come to work. And then we're training the next generation of leaders who, if you have a really solid early childhood development experience, that leads to lifetime benefits in terms of career attainment, educational attainment. So it starts early. And so folks are bringing a variety of topics in, affordable housing, programs for returning citizens, and infrastructure, transportation, making sure that people get to work. These are systems problems that are beyond the ability of any one company to solve inside their own walls, or even doing something outside their walls. So we want to invite business leaders who really have an investment in systemic change tied to their talent question and their talent pain points, whatever those are, to bring in some folks from their own organization as well as community partners to come to the lab and come through this 13-week program. It's folks must be CEO sponsored, so that we get that tie back to the company's strategy. This should not be, as Malia put it, some kind of charity thing or just philanthropy. This should really be core to your business strategy. So anyone who comes to the BILT-Lab must be CEO sponsored, because it's a professional development opportunity, a business strategy opportunity, as well as a systems change opportunity in the community. And people will be choosing a project area. They'll be working on it to develop specific goals, metrics, a funding plan. They'll be defining their stakeholder ecosystem and mapping that, and then reaching out to the stakeholders in the community who are relevant for the issue that they want to tackle. they'll be taking the first steps towards change, and then they'll be building in and beginning to learn how to build a learning system. So there's a cycle of reflecting, continuous improvement, and then we will be setting teams up for sustainable momentum. And you will get coaching from experts as well as faculty, MIT faculty. And we're working at multiple levels. So people will get training in personal leadership disciplines, organizational level strategies for attracting and retaining talent and creating great jobs, as well as systems change disciplines, systems thinking, using power wisely to lead complex change, storytelling, etc. So we've got a great program for people that I think will be very impactful for anyone who wants to come through the program.
Fantastic. And we're sharing the link here if you'd like to learn more about this program. The link is there below. Great. So just thinking about MIT, when you're talking about the system dynamics and systems thinking, that was founded right here at MIT by Jay Forrester. So it's really exciting to study and apply that to such an important initiative in your community. There's also topics that we're really well known for here at MIT, like technology and leadership and thinking about cutting edge and what's going on in technology and business. How will those topics be incorporated into the program?
Should I take that one, or Malia or Tom? Do you want to jump? So one thing that we do, I think, really well at MIT. I've been at MIT for 20 years, and we are truly interdisciplinary. We have many institutes and programs that are really interdisciplinary, and the BILT faculty also represents that. We have Sloan faculty. We have a wonderful teacher named Caesar McDowell from the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, who teaches civic design and civic engagement. And he's got a fantastic method for that. We have Christine Ortiz involved, who is an engineer by training and does a lot of work on diversity in STEM education. And the intention is really to, when you're thinking about systems change, it's tempting to get lost before you even get started and get overwhelmed by the complexity and the scale of the problems. And I think one thing that we do pretty well at MIT, especially at the business school, is winnow down these complicated problems into, so you're not trying to boil the ocean, but you're trying to get down to something that you can sink your teeth into as a team and start to create some high leverage, identify the high leverage points for change, and then begin to lean into that and start to build momentum with a core leadership team. Get your team, your small team, be really high performing. And we have people here who teach the disciplines of high performing teams. And then start to get going and create those small wins that build success, build stakeholder trust, build momentum over time, and continually track what you're trying to do against the larger systems problem, which may take multiple lifetimes to really change. But you also want to keep people engaged and in the game and tracking progress. So we're pulling on all these different disciplines, but it's really focused on this problem of complex systems change. And what do you have to do to get started and to sustain momentum and keep people motivated and engaged at the table? And do it wisely. Don't do it as a business where you're coming in and imposing your solutions, dropping a bunch of money on the community, failing to build sustainable capacity in the community itself, and then leaving after a few years after you've put your brand name on a building. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about teaching business leaders how to come in and leave the community better off than when they found it, one way or the other, even if they depart. And we want them to have a thoughtful exit strategy if they've been doing work, and then empower the community to continue on and really build that sustainable capacity.
And Kate, there's a great way from all those things to go together, right? Like we've seen in Rhode Island with the recent project we took on, right? To hit our sustainability and renewable energy goals statewide, we wanted to figure out what our workforce needs were, right? And we've talked a lot about offshore wind and wind technicians and the people who need to climb up the big towers and do those, right? You can't be afraid of heights to do jobs like that. We've also talked a lot about electric vehicle batteries and how we need to manufacture them and how can we support this. We engaged with a consultant and came in and interviewed a lot of people to give ourselves a basic stakeholder analysis to say like, all right, like what's the landscape? Like, what do we actually need to focus on here? And the answer was surprising. The answer was, hey, you know what you guys need? You guys need electricians. And your electricians need to have a little bit of software skills. And you have a really interesting way to catapult thousands of Rhode Islanders into the middle class and beyond by training a diverse group of electricians through your labor unions, through your community college programs. And here's how to start, right? That's the type of program and the real tactical nature, I think, that we will get into by the end of the BILT-Lab, right? So ideally in those final weeks, you're putting together a plan to say, oh, okay, it's not the bright, shiny object. It's the core to our community. It's the core skill set that we need to do a better job of building and putting our arms around. And that is what is going to propel not only our state's sustainability and renewable energy goals, right, but the companies that we need and want to grow here, while also making a big, big change into the lives of thousands of Rhode Islanders who can be trained relatively quickly, right? It's not a 3-week course, but can be trained to become an electrician and really put themselves on a better career path also.
Great. Malia, do you have anything more to share about what you've seen that's really contributed to the momentum that we're talking about? So you mentioned having someone in a powerful position to take the lead and help drive. You mentioned making sure that the efforts are not parked in a cost center, right? That it's a strategic effort. What else have you seen that's really helped with that momentum that gets these projects going?
I mean, I think that along with budget, right? Let me tell you what kills momentum, right? Because I think anything keeps momentum. That's the virtue of momentum. Like this rooster, he's going to keep going because he's feeling good about himself. It's the morning here in Hawaii, and he's letting all the hens know he's here, right? Thank you, Mr. Rooster. But to talk about what kills momentum, right? And in my book, I actually have 7 stages, right? The 7 stages from intention to impact, and 3 of those stages deal with pushback. Because that is your momentum killer. When you feel that you belong and you go to include others and the people who are part of your tribe start questioning you, that kills momentum, right? Middle management not giving people time or prioritizing, that kills momentum, right? It not sitting in your evaluations, it not being tied to bonuses, that kills momentum, right? So we know how to build momentum in corporate America, right? If you're a CEO, you know exactly what you need to do when you're going to sell a new widget, right? Or start a new compliance training, right? And it becomes part of the culture. And so I think, thinking about where is that pushback? And then how do I deal with that pushback? So a common pushback, that we hear a lot is, well, are we going to hire less qualified people? Right? Because we're hiring the ladies, we're hiring people of color. They can't possibly be as qualified. And that very question is filled with privilege, right? So rather than saying, well, this is what we have to do because, our numbers aren't good, you say like, well, actually, most women are overqualified. Most people of color are overqualified for the positions they have because of bias, right? So we're actually looking forward to increasing the talent, right? And the abilities we have. And we think we may actually be able to get them cheaper, right? Than we would be able to get some of these guys who might not be as experienced, right? When you see most excluded people, they have 30 times more the experience, right? To get to where they are. And so you answer the questions in ways that reinforce value, right? That reinforce the why you're doing this. And what we know is that diverse teams are 34% more profitable, right? That women-led teams have an innovation bump, 21%, right? Higher patents in Silicon Valley, women-led teams than men-led teams. And so this idea of momentum and of, how to support it, I think is also having the knowledge of why you're doing this, and again, I know someone asked in the question, what is the first step that a company can take? And it's understanding that you will get pushback and that you need to push back against that pushback. And what kills momentum is exactly not pushing back against the pushback. So someone says, as I said, oh, are we going to hire less qualified people? Are we going to hire a woman who's less qualified, over a man because we have to hire women? Like, don't just see that as a valid question. That question is full of sexism. Right. I mean, the fact that it's the dude's job in the first place, right? The fact that, white men kind of walk around and go, oh, here's mine. I discovered this, right? And they do it with jobs too. Deconstructing that has to be in your culture. And so the first step to also answer that question is about understanding what is in, culture eats strategy for breakfast. What is in your culture that is going to have people say things like, well, are we going to hire least qualified ladies, right? And don't let that stuff go, right? Actually explain why what they're saying is wrong. The last thing I'll say, which I think is a really good example, because it was forced criminally, was the Me Too movement, right? I mean, we had high-performing men losing their jobs. 20 days before Me Too, they had their jobs, right? I mean, but actually the business had to shift to show women that corporate America was a safe place to work, right? Sometimes you have to break things. And I think with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is the case. Just like with sexual harassment, some big boys had to lose their jobs because that is unacceptable in business culture in the 21st century. Racism, homophobia, these things have to be seen as equal to that and handled in the way.
I think the rooster agrees.
Here. The rooster just amened me. See? We won't get into the misogyny of roosterdom, but let me tell you, it is not pretty, folks.
So I think that the different types of skills and opportunities that can be gone after are going to be changing over time, right? With advances in technologies and the way the world works and the way business works, also the different regions. But there are some skills and capabilities, I think, that CEOs are saying that they need and they want in their pipeline. And those tend to be, I think, skills that are more the human skills, right? The human skills that we need in our leaders and in our pipeline. Would any of you like to add a little bit about what you're hearing with regard to those types of skills and the needs in the workforce?
I can jump in, but I think we all have thoughts about this. And I think you can look at, say, Google's hiring criteria, for instance, as a starter list, which has things like critical thinking, problem solving. There's so much emphasis now on, I actually prefer to stay away from the term soft skills because it sounds less serious somehow than the hard tech financial skills. But we're talking about team skills, relational skills, influencing skills, the ability to, at a personal level, regulate your emotions and understand your interior landscape so that you can speak for what you're feeling instead of just reacting, and take a breath in between something that's upsetting and what comes out of your mouth. And that internal regulation capacity is really huge. And I think going back to our conversation about the next generation of workers, I think there is a huge emphasis, and rightly so, on mental health and understanding what it takes to create good mental health and how to design teams and environments where people feel like they are included, they belong, they can bring who they really are and contribute and do it safely. And a lot of these kinds of leadership skills are what companies are looking for. And you know what? We don't often train for those things as much as we could in the K to 12 and then higher ed. And oftentimes, you wait till grad school and then maybe you take a leadership class, or you kind of learn along the way. And, and I think there's some really exciting programs also at companies around, for instance, reverse mentoring or mentoring. I think the art of mentoring has often been lost in our society, and we need to revive that. So there are some great programs around having younger workers mentor the older generation about what are the concerns of their generation, teaching them tech skills, teaching them social media skills, teaching them what the younger generation needs around feeling a sense of purpose and belonging. And so there's just a lot of teaching and mentoring that I think we can all be doing to teach those critical thinking, leadership, relational influencing, team leadership skills that so many companies are looking for.
And Meg, let me add on to that. I think this goes back to, the failure of trying to build a public-private partnership around people, right? We understand that the biggest firms in the world, go to Sloan and other business schools and pick their summer interns and say, okay, you have the credentials. Let me show you how we do business. That combination will make you a good fit here, and you're on your way, right? What we don't say, right, is, or what employers are just starting to say is, let me go to the place where those personal skills, that grit, right, that ability to get through problems, to be a problem solver, to maybe work and go to school at the same time. Let me go to a place like a community college and find those skill sets that I'm looking for, because they know how to get stuff done, and will help build, give you the credentials you need to succeed in this workplace, right? We're seeing that a lot in Rhode Island, right? Where the community college has become a source of for employers to go, because it's a Hispanic serving institution. We understand what the student body looks like, and that, they're not just going back to their dorm room, right, and playing video games, right? Like a lot of silly undergrads did, and I was part of it, right? But you are talking about people that have real problems to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Man, that's the kind of stuff employers want, right? Get stuff done, know how to persevere, and we can give you the credential. But building a partnership with a community college, right? Those are things we haven't quite figured out how to do well yet, right? And we're trying a lot of different ways and failing a lot of times, sometimes here in my state, but hoping that the BILT program can help clear the noise from that and make it so that you can build a program, when you find that workforce of your future, whether you need to give them the credentials or you need to give them those personality, is what Kate has told me not to call soft skills, but if you want to give them those, we can figure that out too. So hopefully that's a problem we look forward to solving with some of the cohort.
I would just add on quickly that I think one of the biggest and shifts, right, in the 21st century CEO leadership is around self-reflection, vulnerability, and fluidity. You need to be able to self-reflect, right? You need to be able to look at, it can't just be like, I'm going to throw money at a problem. Right. It's my people's problem. I'm off to play golf until the quarterly earnings call, right? Like, again, that idea of leadership is dead, right? Especially, in society, right? Maybe not in corporations, but in society. And, if you want to be a leader in the 21st century, knowing how to apologize, huge, right? And I mean, I held the CEO's hand for 3 months to get an apology out, right? Like, it was so hard for him. He could say it was a misstatement, right? But for him to say sorry. And it was almost heartbreaking to me, because I was like, wow, who are you? Right? That you feel you have to be this person in order to lead this, to lead this company. And so, I think you're hearing, we're all getting at things like emotional intelligence, and that process takes a different type of person. I think, I think a lot of times CEOs grew up, watching Alex P. Keaton, right? Watching Greed is Good, watching, that dude, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and thinking, this is how I look, right? Like, I send my secretary to get me coffee. I sit on and if that's your feeling, you need to shift that, and I think a lot of what, getting comfortable in those new skins is part of
Right.
what we're going to help folks do. We're going to try on, these new jackets of fluidity, right? And we're going to see how best they fit. Because someone said in the chat, narcissist. I mean, I think this idea of sociopathy no longer is working for American capitalism or even global capitalism, right? Sociopathy is not working anymore. And we need to move beyond that and have leaders who actually want to work in group and without ego.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot at MIT about moving from command and control to coordinate and cultivate, right? And in many cases, these very experienced leaders have probably been rewarded for saving the day and solving the problem by themselves. And so they need to unlearn that, and they need to set the intention to say, I don't have all of the answers, and there are people around me who can help us find the right answer and find a new or innovative solution, right? So the leader should actually be relieved. It's not all on them, right? There's all kinds of talent around, but you have to listen. You have to ask the right questions. You have to engage people in a place where they're safe, right? To experiment and say what they think and offer their ideas. And those things sound really simple, but they're not easy to do. They take a lot of intention and practice, and I think that's why those skills are so in demand.
That's right. Can I just jump in there about it? It takes practice, right? Practice. It's a yoga, right? It takes intention and it takes practice. And again, this isn't a compliance, intranet training, right? This is, how do you listen to your kids? Because honestly, your kids are going to tell you more about what's going on and how you need to, treat people inside your company. I mean, you may be teaching your kids some of these ideas right now, right? Golden rule, platinum rule, right? And then you go in and you let people say that they're scared about hiring women, right? And so, sitting in some of those more human things, I think also helps folks then remember to be human at work, which, quote Brene Brown, right? That vulnerability is not something that we allow men to have, right? There's more men named John that are heads of Fortune 500 companies than women, right? We have more Johns than women that are leading CEOs, that are leading companies. All of that plays into this need, right? For the emotional, the vulnerable, and diverse thought.
So let's go back to this the BILT program, the lab that's launching in March. Who are the people who should be thinking about attending the program?
Just to build on everything that's said here, I've said earlier, we want people to come who are sponsored by the CEO. They should have seniority in the organization in the sense that they should have power. As Malia pointed out, you need power in order to move the needle. So you should have power and influence in your organization and credibility in the community. In addition to that, speaking to this conversation about professional skills, social and emotional skills, we want people to park their egos at the door, or at least the egos that are power hungry and want to just put your name on things for the sake of putting your name on things. We want people to come with their curiosity, with their humility, with their genuine interest in inclusive prosperity for themselves, their companies, their communities. And so we want people with that kind of mindset who are genuinely invested in the success of their companies and communities. We want people who want their businesses to really succeed economically, because businesses that are high performing are, we're at Sloan Business School. We want your business to be high performing. And we want you to do that by investing in the community, so the community is doing well and your business is doing well, and they both go together. So those are the kinds of folks we're looking for to be part of this pilot cohort launch program in March.
Great. Well, let's take a look here in the chat and see if we can take some questions from the.
I saw Bogdan, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Bogdan Bogdanovic, had a question about examples about how companies can contribute to communities beyond charities and education. I have a good example of that. I know Malia and Tom have some other examples too. But I think it's good to get these out. Tom mentioned his the welding program in Rhode Island. And I have worked with a wonderful company for 15 plus years in the Midwest in Columbus, Ohio, a big power company. Companies that have geographic place-based operations are really great candidates for participating in the BILT-Lab because they're tied to the region geographically. So American Electric Power has operated in Appalachia for many decades and is shifting now from a coal-fired power plant base of power generation to introducing more natural gas and renewables. Just as we're decarbonizing the economy, American Electric Power is decarbonizing its electric generation. And as they were shuttering coal plants in these Appalachian communities, people were losing their livelihoods. And the thing about folks who live in Appalachia is they love their communities. They don't want to pick up and move around. They are rooted and grounded in the beautiful area that that many generations have lived. So American Electric Power was faced with the challenge of what to do to help reinvigorate the economy as these coal-fired power plants and mines are shutting down. And so this is a perfect kind of problem that for the BILT-Lab, where it's a complicated systems problem. American Electric Power can't solve this problem alone. So what they did was to launch a partnership and worked with a number of different companies and nonprofit groups to certify regions in Appalachia as aero ready. And so what you have to do to be aero ready is to have a worker base that turns out that a lot of welders, interestingly, sharing the conversation with you, Tom, in Rhode Island, there are a lot of welders who work in power plants, and welders also are very needed in aerospace and aviation industries. So American Electric Power worked in this systems way and helped to get a number of regions and cities in Appalachia certified as aero ready, with a lot of trained welders that could be reskilled to work in aerospace and aviation, with enough infrastructure to bring in companies. And then that strategy has been working. So a lot of aerospace and aviation companies are starting to locate their new operations in these regions that are certified. The coal plant gets shut down, aerospace and aviation industry opens up. And that's one way a company has been really effective at driving systems change way beyond its own walls. Great for business, because the thriving regional economy means that American Electric Power is selling power and continuing on with its operations. So I just wanted to put that out there. By the way, they've won many, many awards for diversity and gender inclusiveness at the most senior levels of the company. They have a female CEO. So they've been working on diversity and inclusion for many, many years. And they're just an outstanding company. So wanted to throw that out there. That's the kind of example that we're going to be. We have a whole database of examples like that, a library that we're building that's populated with many, many examples of business-led efforts like that folks can learn from and adapt to their regions as part of the BILT-Lab.
And I'm sure that there's a network out there that people are happy to share their experience, what they've learned, where they fell down and where they were successful, and those things can be helpful to other regions and teams who are after the same type of success.
Yeah, Meg, I think that's part of this, right? Part about building a national network is that best practices in workforce and in people-related partnerships are really not shared too often, right? And that is a shame because these are not secret recipes, right? This is not the right, the recipe for Coca-Cola or the code that built the valuable platform, right? This is something that can be lifted, shifted, replicated, scaled, and it doesn't hurt the home region to do that at all. So we're hoping to build a national network and a real understanding of, where workforce works, where business investments in local driving work, right? Whether it be sustainability or housing or transportation or health, and how can they be scaled or replicated? Because we have a real opportunity to do that. And I think the BILT-Lab is the only place right now that's having that conversation. So we're excited about that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. We're running out of time here, so we have a couple of minutes left. I guess I'll open it up if there are any last comments before we say goodbye to everyone.
Well, Meg, I want to thank you and your team for the help here in starting this and allowing us to launch the BILT-Lab. There are not many other business schools that would say, oh, we really want to tackle what it looks like to have social impact programs. We really want to lean in and talk about what it means to invest in a place, right? And how that affects bottom line, right? And we really, for the company, I really appreciate your leadership and your team's leadership because you guys are looking outside the box to understand, right, how to do this and advise folks across the country and the world. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Tom.
I second that. And I also want to tag on to a comment. Someone was wondering, when are applications due? Just what are the logistics? Somebody asked for a link. So I think the Sloan team will put the link to the program in. There is an application form online. We are looking to enroll people by the end of January. So if you're a business leader, think about who you might want to have from your company participate in the program. Should be at least 3 people from the business sector and at least 1 or 2 people from a community partner that's relevant to the problem or opportunity that you want to tackle in your community. So fill out the application form. If you are a business leader who wants to collaborate with some other businesses in an industry sector or others who are civic minded in your community, get together with them and put in an application together so that you've got multiple companies represented for your region. And then and bring folks to the table. This is an opportunity to bring folks to the table to develop that common language and stronger relationships and really accelerate an innovation project or a problem that you have in mind. So, and we're happy to talk with you and meet with you and find out what you're thinking and what you want to get out of the program. So that invitation is open. Fill out an application and we will happily have a chat with you about how we can make your time in the program successful.
Thanks so much. And I'm sure the team will also share my email. Folks can feel free to reach out to me as well.
Malia, any last words before we wrap up?
You wrapped it up so nicely, Kate. I didn't want, I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, let's just, thank you, everyone. Please feel free, to reach out any questions you may have. But we're also going to have a lot of fun. If there's something that Kate and I and Tom it's like, this work isn't painful. It's getting to know other people. It's learning how to save your planet. It's hard work and that should be fun work. If it hurts, you don't have the right teacher. So come on over here and let us help you through some of that quote unquote pain. We will be having a good time while we do this work. And I think that's also an important aspect of how we designed it.
Thanks, Malia. And I'd just like to say it's such a privilege to be here with the 3 of you. You're such amazing leaders, and the work that you're doing is the kind of thing that makes me proud to be part of the community at MIT and the wonderful leaders that are out there really tackling the tough issues in the world. So like Malia said, come on out, we'll have fun together and we'll solve some really hard problems.
And someone just asked where you can find my book. You can find my book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, or MIT Press.
February. It's out for pre-order now.
It's out
right?
for pre-order now. So go ahead, go get it now.
And by the way, part of having fun is food. We feed you really well at
Oh
Sloan.
my God.
And so we will make sure that you eat really well when you come to visit us. So just putting that out there too. All right.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.